I know what you're gonna say. I know what you're gonna say. I need you to just don't talk right now. Don't talk. Do you realize how early this is? Don't you do that to me right now. It is so early in the morning, Jimmy. I don't understand why this is a thing for you. You know, it's like 5 o'clock on the West Coast. I feel like I was just on the West Coast. So clearly I'm still feeling that. And you're out here, well, it's 8 o'clock. I probably got my workout in. I haven't, Jimmy. I haven't. Okay. So let's be honest about what's happening right now. This is survival mode right now. I don't know what I'm going to say. I could be delirious right now. I don't know. We could talk about, we could start talking about, appreciation. We could talk about leadership. And I'm going to end up talking about like why spam is the dumbest thing in the history of the world. I don't know where this is going to go today right now, but this is an issue and this is your fault, man. I wanted to sleep in. Fine. We'll talk about whatever you want.
Shane Greenland reached out to me and said, Jimmy, can you just do a little bit earlier? That way I don't have to go to bed and wake up at 3 a.m. I'd rather just stay up till 3 a.m. So that's what this is all about.
I understand that. I get that. I understand.
That's what happens when you're not in Hawaii. We got to help our Hawaiian friends, Joe. We got to support them out there.
Just stop right now. That's one. Shane's like an incredible dude. You tell me how many more people in Hawaii are up right now watching this at 3 a.m. The answer is 0. The answer is 0, Jimmy. I mean, let's be honest. This is
I'm laughing that you limited it to Hawaii. I'm wondering if there's anybody up anywhere. 0.
Oh, no.
Travis Bloom. Travis Bloom is in the house. You know why? Because he's now
a doctor.
Travis Bloom. Doctors early in the morning. There you go, Joe. There you go,
Dr. Bloom.
Although my kids would never call you Dr. Joe Sanfilippo. You're just Joe to them. But Dr. Zoll, they have his respect.
Everybody's thinking, well, what does that really mean? Well, that actually happened. I mean, that happened when your daughter called me Joe and kept referring to Jeff Zoll as Dr. Zoll. I actually left dinner. I left the dinner. I couldn't be in a space where that kind of disrespect was happening. Zoll, Dr. Zoll, whatever.
We go.
Oh my gosh.
We go to a nice Chicago restaurant. I'm going to treat you to a nice Chicago restaurant, and Joe Sanfilippo shows up in a hoodie. I'm surprised they even let you in.
Yeah, I understand that. Hey, look, man, I just figured that I wanted to be comfortable because I figured you'd get those alligator arms as soon as the check came. So I wanted to make sure if I was going to pay for it, I was going to make sure that I felt comfortable there doing it. Thankfully, I just went to the bathroom right before a check came. Worked out pretty well. I like that. So this morning's sponsored. This morning's sponsored by 5 Hour Energy, apparently, right here, people. I'm telling you right now. What do you need? I got them all for you. Man, what a day. Holy Hannah. It's early, Jimmy. I'm just going to tell you it's early, but I'm happy to be here and hope you're having I hope you had a great week. Yeah. And looking forward to talking about all things leadership because it's always about leadership. And I'll joke until I'm blue in the face, but I love spending this time with you. So what do you got on your mind today, my friend?
Listen, buddy, thank you for the laughs. I needed that a little bit. You know how, the reality of it is, it's a good week. But heart's a little heavy. And, it doesn't surprise anybody, all the things that are going around our country especially when it comes to children, right?
Yeah.
These kids are in our schools every day. I can't even imagine, a parent losing a child or anything like that. But I was down in Alabama this week, Joe, and literally just right down the road, just not too many miles away from Alexander City where I was, a shooting at a birthday party. And unfortunately, obviously some young people died from that. And, many young people injured and quite frankly, traumatized. And when you're in a community like that, it's like, you're not even sure what to say, right? Because, these are small communities where everybody knows everybody. And it just kind of got me reflecting again, right? It's amazing to me how people just can come together in a community. And it just tells you something about those communities, how amazing those educators are. And it's funny because when those things happen, what's really interesting, it seems like the schools are the places that people go to.
Yeah.
Because I think it's because they know there are people there that are going to love on them, right? And and so anyway, it's just a reminder to thank all our educators out there, because every day, right? One thing I always say, I guarantee you this: they didn't teach us this in any education course that we ever took, and that is how to deal with an empty chair in the classroom, or how to deal with an empty chair at graduation. So anyway, just wanted to thank all of our educators, for those who follow us and those who don't, and those that are in our network, and those that are in schools working today. Just thank you for what you do, and we're just really, really grateful. But it's amazing what happens when you see communities come together like that. So really hard. It was a week.
I can only imagine, and I can't, obviously our hearts go out to everybody, and that's not even enough. Let's be honest about that. I mean, we can say that, thoughts and prayers and everything that goes along with it. It's never going to be enough until things change. And I've been in a couple situations where, when we go out and we speak like you were this week, and you're with that group that's gone through that incredible trauma. I've had it happen where they've handled it a couple different ways. One group that I went to work with, there was a tragedy that happened the evening before, and they just telling staff members about it right before I went on to try and motivate people and get people excited and that kind of thing. And so, you obviously want to know your audience and where they're at, but they did a really nice thing. They said, why don't we take a 15-minute break? Anybody who wants to come back and hear the message for today, please do. And if you feel like you need more time to just kind of be in your space and do what you need to do to get yourself right, you go do that. And then another group that I had, the superintendent had called me the evening before and just said, we're just not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. And both scenarios, they were right. They were right because they knew their people well enough to know what they needed at that particular time. And I said, whatever you need, we're going to do. And if that means me not being there, absolutely not a problem at all. Is there anything I can do to support you or your team, as you're trying to get through it right now, just to kind of be a set of ears or something like that. But I think one of the things that I think we need to understand is it's just not just like that's awful to say. So when we went through COVID, there was no playbook to go through COVID and lead through a pandemic. There's no real playbook to lead through tragedy, because even if there's a set of protocols and there's a process, if it's a general process, it doesn't speak to the people that you serve. And if you don't know the people that you serve, then all of a sudden we put ourselves in a difficult situation. Having said that, as long as we do it from our heart, and as long as we communicate in a way that makes people feel like they're heard and seen in that moment, and listen, and we're actually listening to them, not just saying that we're going to, people are going to walk out with a better chance to get better. And I think that's all we can hope for in that situation. And I think that everybody's looking for, like, how exactly is it supposed to work? What am I supposed to do? Well, if you know your people well enough, or if you're new and you don't know your people well enough, but somebody that you're close to does, lean on all of that expertise to connect and talk about how we can move everybody forward, or at least connect them and galvanize them. And you are 100% right, especially in these small school districts. It's when something awesome happens, and it's when tragedy strikes, that the school is the hub of the community. And that's a tremendous amount of pressure, but it's also an opportunity as well. And I think that if we can figure out ways to put ourselves in a situation where we become the place where we're listened to, then where we can listen to people, then I think we're doing what we sought out to do, which is serve communities, serve kids, serve families. And in doing that, I think we walk away feeling better. Having said that, Jimmy, I think the other thing that we need to understand is that when we get, when we become the group that's the listeners, right? That we're the help. We're always there to help and that kind of thing. please don't forget that the people who you're asking to help others, they're going to need help too. So if we're having people come in and we're the ones that are, again, the hub of the community, and we're there, we're listening to everything, and your leaders are taking on more because of all the stuff going on, we got to figure out how we're taking care of the adults in that spot, right? But who's taking care of the adults who are taking care of the adults, right? So how are we doing? What are we doing to put ourselves in that spot where the people that are doing everything they can and more to help others, how are they getting their needs met too? And that I often think about that, because I think, we run people so, we run them at the same time. If they're helping others out, then how are we making sure that we're helping them so they don't feel like they get burned out too?
Yeah. Great reminders, Joe. And again, we just want to take a moment just to acknowledge and thank everybody again for, it's just, people have just no idea the emotional toll this job takes on us, I think. So we do. We get it. We definitely get it. So thank you, everyone who's joined us this morning. We're talking about leadership, as Joe said, because it's always about leadership and the impact that has on culture and the morale of our organizations. So Joe, shifting gears a little bit here this week. So here's some things that came up. And again, this is the thing about, you're flying or you land and you're driving, you got all these thoughts in your head because you're trying to figure out what role do I play in this? How can I serve? How can I support? So here's some topics that came up. I'll let you choose one and see if you have any thoughts on any of these. But I think
no pressure.
They're all kind of no pressure there, buddy. They're all, I'll try to help you. They're all they intersect, right? And this is just a reminder that that's because when we talk about culture, it isn't like just one thing, right? It's everything. Yeah. It's everything. And so again, that's what makes our job so complicated, I think. And so here's some of the themes that kind of, rose this week for me as I'm working with principals and even a superintendent out there and a few directors. Here's the themes. Number one, leaders who are struggling with staff members who are not meeting the standard of expectations that they need them to meet. For whatever reason, their job performance is not meeting that standard. So that's one area. How to navigate those conversations, how to not hurt our culture, how to show the respect and give these people the dignity who have been maybe in some cases working for years, but for whatever reason have not been living up to that standard. And quite frankly, in many cases have really never been addressed on that issue.
Yeah.
And we talk about this sometimes, right? That's part of it's because, sometimes we don't even know how to address it. And sometimes we do address it and it hurts our culture. So we don't want to address it. Sometimes we address it and we become the lightning rod and like, well, that wasn't worth it. I'm being questioned and yet somebody else isn't doing their job. So there's all these factors and many, many, many others. Okay. So that's one area. The second area is, okay, but you also have these people that, before that, I guess the part of that would go with that is the micromanaging. I heard that a lot this week, right? Feel like I'm being micromanaged, right? Don't have the autonomy to do the work and to do my job. Why can't I hire my person without someone? Why can't I just teach what I want to teach? And why is someone always kind of telling me what I need to teach? These types of things are constantly coming up. And how do they intersect between the person who isn't maybe performing at the level they need to perform at and feel like they're being micromanaged? But what about the person who feels like consistently they're doing everything they're supposed to do and yet feel micromanaged, right?
Right.
And then I walk into another environment, complete autonomy. But then they're asking for some structure. If I had some structure, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just doing the best I can. So these are all the things that are so real that happen in organizations. And so we share that with our audience for you to reflect on your own leadership and what's happening in your own buildings and say, oh my God, am I kind of doing that? And how do I even know? And then the last one is, I was asked this question. It's one of those things where you're just put right on the spot. Hey, what's your opinion on Teacher of the Year awards? What's your opinion on that? And it's one of those things again, like, I'm not here to make a decision one way or the other or to judge it one way or the other. I think I can talk about the benefits of it. And I think I can talk about the downfall. As long as we see that and we're prepared for that, then we got to be ready for that. Again, in some communities, that is a tradition. That is a history. Don't you dare mess with that Teacher of the Year award, right? And in other communities, they're struggling with what to do because it does create undercurrents and many times, right? I'll give you an example here, and I got to be a little careful, but it's a general one that I did come across, and it's a hard one. It's one of those where, and what's the process for selecting these teachers years are teacher of the month, and then of course we got students of the month and all these other things. And so those are all the things that, you know, I was trying to navigate this week. And again, it's not our job to tell people what to do, but it is our job to ask a lot of questions as long as they can begin to understand, well, what is your process? Why do you do that? What is the benefit? How are you addressing those that have concerns? All those different types of things. So in the audience today, if you have some sort of recognition for staff that happens monthly or at the end of the year, if you wouldn't mind chiming in, what is it you do? What has been your experience with that? How do you deal with people who feel sometimes they're micromanaging? Do you feel sometimes you do micromanage, and why do you do that? And how do you deal with these people, you know, in our organizations that are underperforming, and how do we address that? So, Joe, I'll let you reflect. Not trying to put you on the spot, but anywhere you want to go with that. We'll see where we're going.
You're all over the place, man. Like you are all of this because it's early.
They intersect, right? I know I'm all over the place, but this is what. But I'm trying to see how they all can interconnect.
Because I think they do. You know? I agree. I think they do. But I think so. So I'm going to try to hit all three, to be honest. So and then we can just kind of see.
Whoa! Wait a second. All three? All three?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, hold on.
You know,
whoa. First of all, grab the Red Bull can again. Grab the Red Bull can before. Take a swig. For power.
I haven't gotten there yet. I'll tell you. Those are. Yeah. That's the. Anyway.
All right, but I'll take some notes.
Yeah. I think, well, you know where it's going to come back to. It's going to come back to whether or not we have a relationship with the people that we're dealing with in every single one of those conversations. So that's how I can talk about all three. I think when people talk about being micromanaged, my first question to them is like, so what does that look like to you? So what does it look like? How do you feel like you're being? What are some specific examples of being micromanaged, and what does that really look like? And have you ever had that conversation with the people that you believe are micromanaging you? Have you had the conversation about these specific things? Because sometimes we just do stuff because it's on the slate of things to do, because maybe a predecessor had done it, or because we had set up a system that we may not love, but we're doing it because we got to get to the next thing, because there's always a checklist mentality in terms of what we do. And, you know, if you're willing to say something to the person or the group that's micromanaging, or make sure that you're connected to someone who can say something to the person that you believe is in that situation, then at least you can address it. And more often than not, if you address it and say, this is how I feel in this particular way, you're going to get one of two responses. One response is going to be, yes, I'm sorry, that's just the way that we need to do it because the protocol and the policy says that we have to do it this way. Or the second thing is going to be, I didn't even realize that. And this is why I did it. Is there a better way to do it? So you'll get an answer, good or bad, or you're going to get there, well, that's just the way that we're doing it, and I'm the boss, and just we're going to move forward like that. And that's a different conversation to have, because if that's a conversation, we need to have a real conversation about what leadership is supposed to look like in that particular area. But I think you'll get, more often than not, you'll get one of the first two, right? An explanation for why it's being done that way, or I didn't even realize that this was hitting you the way that it was. And I have to believe that, because I honestly, I know there are bad leaders out there, Jimmy. I really do. I get that. I know that there are people that really lean in on the ego and goes and just can't get out of that whole, mentality. They're not listening to this. Let's be honest about that. They already have all the answers anyway. So it's not like we're not helping them at all, no matter what we say. Okay. But I think the vast majority of leaders in this world want to be seen as good leaders. I think they want to be seen as people that are willing to help others. I really do. And to be really honest, if I didn't believe that, I don't think we should be doing this. I mean, really, because then who are we really helping? Honestly, right? So I think if you're willing to say something like, when I have the conversation with people, I just ask them, tell me something specific that this person or this group of people does that make you feel like you're micromanaged. You had mentioned the hiring piece of it, right? The hiring piece, if somebody say, if you're saying, well, why can't I just hire this person? Why can't I just hire this person? And then if they said that to me, my answer would be, well, because of board policy, we have to do a background check. after we do a background check, the recommendation has to go to the board, and then the board has to review it, and then the board has to decide whether or not, and then board has to vote on it. So if you feel like you want to just hire this person, I can't allow you to do that because of these specific policies that are in place. Having said that, somebody's going to make the call to this person to offer them the job, right? And usually it's me, because that's what I do. I'm in HR. That's what I do. What if you just did that? Why don't you do that? But you don't have to offer the job. Can you please say to them, we would like to recommend you for hire to the board on April 17th. And then the board will make the final decision. But you're our top candidate, and we're really excited to have you, right? So you can meet them in the middle, right? Because if you get an explanation for why it has to be done in a certain capacity, then you don't have to love that explanation, but at least you know it's real. And then you ask the next question, can I be involved with the process because I really am excited about what we could do here? And I think that's been I think that helps the process out because it's an explanation. So let's just, in fact, instead of getting to all three, let's just start there, and then we'll kind of move forward. I do want to touch on the student of the month or student of the year, teacher of the year. We can do that later.
Yeah. I'll start with the micromanaging. I was just taking some notes as you were talking because it was just getting me to think of some things. I was also looking at the comments. Thank you guys for all of you who continue to put things out there. We appreciate that. It is interesting. Almost most schools are doing some sort of recognition, right? So, but I'll come back to that too with you. So let's go back to the micromanaging. So here's what I was thinking in the micromanaging as I was going through. What I kind of figured out, Joe, this week was, I think part of the issue comes from, it's a reminder for all of us again, it's that clarity component.
Yes.
What are the expectations, right? So if I'm being micromanaged, maybe it's because I'm not even clear what I'm supposed to be doing or what the expectations that are expected of me, whatever those types of things are. And that goes both at the leadership level and at the classroom level. So what's the clarity of what is expected of that, right? And then the next thing I recognize is part of what I think bothered people is that I feel, as always, and I kind of already saw a comment in here in the thread, is as soon as it's done to us without a voice, right? We have no voice in that process, okay? So once again, it goes back to how are we at least going out? Why would we go micromanage something before we even know the history of it or why it's happening? And I think that's kind of the issue that happens. And I think the reason that happens, Joe, is because we feel rushed. There are timelines. There are things that we're trying to get done, or we're trying to manage multiple things. And so we just move too quickly, right? It's that thing again where we're just moving so quickly that we bypass these really good practices or best practices when it comes to leadership. Ask your people their current experiences to understand why they've been doing the things they've been doing and why, what's the history, where did this start? How did we get here? What's the benefit? Is it serving its purpose? All these types of things that we need to kind of slow down. So here's something to think about, maybe practical for our audiences. Kind of think of it this way, maybe frame it up as what, why, how. Yeah. And I think the what, why, how can serve in so many capacities. So again, if there is a change that we're looking to make, what is the change? Why are we thinking about changing it? And how are we going to change that? So that just comes from maybe implementing an initiative. But what if it's a problem, right? What if it's a problem that we have? Someone comes to you with an issue. What's the problem? Why does the problem exist? And how can we address that? What if it's something that's creative or innovative? What if it's something we want to do that's different, that we've never been done? Okay, what is it you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And how would you do that? I feel like that's at least like a little structure that can kind of help us slow down. That's all I'm trying to say is get it slowed down, bring some clarity to it. And so the example you use on the hire, here's an example that happened is the question came up to this. Do I believe that principals should be able to hire their teachers without being micromanaged from, in their opinion, micromanaged from central office? Well, there's a lot of depends on that in the sense that, well, why are they micromanaging you? Is it because they feel that they don't have the trust in you that you can hire the right people? Is there a history of hiring the wrong people? Did we go down the wrong road and it created issues for us? There's always a story of why people either micromanage or why we feel we're being micromanaged. So again, we have to go back and understand those stories of where is this coming from and why is it happening? So if that is something that's happening to you, then I do think we have to ask ourselves, why is that happening? And having to sit down, having these conversations. But if I'm ideally, do I believe principals should hire their teachers? Absolutely. Do I believe principals should hire their assistant principals? Absolutely. But we also have to understand but do we know how to do that effectively? And so define micromanaging. And that's, I think,
Yes.
the overall thing for me is, as I heard, because micromanaging meant different things to different people.
Right.
And so ideally, I do think superintendents should be hiring principals and principals should be hiring APs. But I also don't think we should just have a principal hire APs and teachers when they don't know how to hire APs and teachers effectively. And it's not their fault. And so maybe it's just, that's our leadership lesson, is if we feel a little bit that we don't have the confidence in people, then we have to be really clear that we're partnering and we're teaching. And the idea is eventually to allow them to do that, because, well, we do believe that. But we can't just hand it over and make assumptions that these people have the skills, because most of us don't when we first go in the profession. So that's kind of what I was seeing. So one thing I was explaining to someone this week is, so we have a principal who has an assistant principal, and there's an opening. And the question became well, this principal wants to hire this other assistant principal. But here's the problem. The assistant principal that they want to hire, first of all, their AP is already brand new. And so that first year. And so they want to hire another AP that's a classroom teacher with no experience and want to make them an assistant principal. So now we have a principal who's also brand new, who already has a brand new AP and wants to hire another brand new AP. And in their opinion, they should have the ability to do that. But in my eyes, I'm saying, but wait a second, the superintendent has a right to come in, and it's how they do it, right? It's just how they present it. But it is, hey, listen, I want to allow you the autonomy to hire your people. But you also have to understand, what are your strengths? What are your current AP strengths? And what gaps do you have? And what you should be focusing on is those gaps. How is that person going to come in and help you and your AP get better? Because by nature, I think, my opinion is, most people want to hire people that they like. And they focus on the liking of the person, as opposed to, what is this person really going to bring in for us? Because strategically, we got to fill these gaps. And would it help the principal if they did hire someone who had those gaps, but also had some experience? Because we know the challenges that come from a principal who continues to have to train a new AP and train a new AP and train a new AP. So it's hard to delegate because, well, they have to be with them, and that takes a lot of time. So there's all these factors that come into play. But I guess my point is I tried to explain to them define what you mean by micromanaging to me. Why do you feel that way? Where is it coming from? And hopefully that brought some clarity to them, because we did kind of T-chart the strengths and what those gaps were, and then ask, is this person going to fill those gaps? And what they realize, no, they're kind of just like us. And so that reflection piece and going through that process took some time, but I do think it was helpful for them. So anyway, those are just some things. And it would be the same thing in the classroom, right? What are the essential learnings, right? Why are we feel the need to address these essential learnings? How are we going to do that? What voice did people have in that process? What agreements are we coming to? How we're going to get there? Those are all things that I think that we as leaders can do on the front end to bring clarity, so people don't feel micromanaged and they don't feel like it's coming top down. But the reality is, Joe, we know this, oftentimes it does come top down, or they've had that experience, and that is frustrating for people. Whether it's if a board president is pressing on you to do this, and that, that's hard, because you were hired to run the district, and yet you're feeling micromanaged. And it's no different for a principal, and it's no different for a teacher, and quite frankly, it's no different for kids. And so those are systemic issues that happen in our organization sometimes.
Yeah, I think we end up putting ourselves in a situation where if we don't define what it looks like, it defines for us. And then all of a sudden that's what it is. I think the thing about micromanagement for me, and I've been extremely lucky in 12 years to not feel that way here from a board perspective. Our board has been incredibly supportive of the work that we do. And I think a lot of times it happens that way because they feel like they feel like they're invested in it. But when we get word out about some of the things that we're doing, and then they start to hear good things about the great work that's happening in the spaces, they're a little more forgiving in terms of some of the logistic things that they would want to micromanage, but they don't, because they see the greater good happening, and they see the popularity of what goes on, that kind of thing, and people feel good about that. I think the thing I love the concept of the what, the why, and the why, the what, and the how. It actually, it's actually the whole concept of the book. I mean, that's for me, that's where we started it. Why we do it, what we do it, and how it looks. That's the whole reason we did it, and I think that's important. But the reason I say that is I think one of the things that's really important is that I hear this a lot. I hear, well, we don't have a voice in what goes on in this area. And there are so many things that happen behind closed doors in meetings and conversations that impact a decision that is made. And to be really honest, I don't know if you want a voice in all that stuff. And the reason I say that is because if we gave everybody a voice in every single thing that happened, they could never concentrate on the thing that they were hired to do. So if we say everybody wants a voice, now you should have a voice in the things that directly impact what that looks like for you, right? Should you then have the same voice in how we market the school district in this area? Or what are we doing in terms of the overall budget, or whatever the case may be? If they're not completely connected to you on a daily basis, I don't know if you want that voice, right? Because if you're concentrating on the stuff that you need to do in the classroom or in your building, and I, as the superintendent, are always, sending out surveys about how we should do this and what we should do about the facility study, and what are we going to do about, the tax impact moving forward, and what are we going to do to make sure that, how far out are we from going to referendum, and what are you thinking about this? And if we have a change in terms of this area, we're going to do different, we're going to paint this place, we're going to put up a wall here, so let's get everybody's voice on what that looks like. So people want their voice heard in places that impact them directly. But I think overall, we got to be careful, because everybody can't have a voice in everything that we do, or they can't do the thing that we hired them to do in particular. So that's a balance for me. And then I think it's actually an easy out. Let's be real. It's an easy out, because when something happens that they don't like, and they say that we have a voice in that, well, you didn't want a voice in the other thing. You just wanted a voice in this one. And when I asked you stuff over here, you didn't even respond to it. So, I mean, this thing goes both ways. And the connection is really the key into it. But it comes back to, obviously it comes back to relationships. And we could talk about that till we're blue in the face. But the other thing that's really important that we don't spend enough time on is, what's the framework for all of these decisions that are being made in all of these areas? And if you have a framework that says, this is what it looks like from a classroom content standpoint, this is what it looks like from a material standpoint, this is what it looks like from a process standpoint, and you have all that defined, and that's the way that you operate, and you still feel micromanaged in that conversation, now we've got to really talk about it, because it was clear. This is what it looked like. You can disagree with that, but that's not micromanagement. If it's clear and this is what it looks like, and then we talk about, you have a voice in this, you have a voice in this, you have a voice in this, but you don't have a voice in this because that doesn't have, that doesn't impact, well, I shouldn't say it like that, because that is something that's far enough away where we've got to take care of these things so you can do the work that you're doing in the classroom or in the building or whatever the case may be. There's so many things that happen outside of the scope of the day-to-day operation of school that people don't see. And then when it doesn't go the way that they want, all of a sudden it turns into, well, I didn't have a voice in that situation. When that was one decision, there was 30 others that we made that you didn't have a voice in either, but you didn't talk about those things. And they still impacted you.
And I do feel like a lot of leaders, there's where they get caught. There's where their frustration lies, right? And I think the most important thing you said in there, which I think you were spot on, and just a reminder to the audience again, is people should have a voice in the things that impact them directly, right? I think you're exactly right on that. But then we have to be clear with them and determine, so they know, there's that clarity again. These are the things that you're going to have a voice in, and here's why. Here's the things I don't believe you should, and you probably don't want to, and here's why. And so that is, again, a reminder, right? And can't maybe in some cases, not even appropriate.
And just saying like you can't. Exactly. Like you
Yeah.
can't have a decision when it comes down to,
Not even
you know,
appropriate.
when it's a personnel decision or when it's,
That's right. And it's the same thing in the classroom. Yes.
Right.
Kids, you're not going to have a voice in everything. Yeah. You don't even, hell, you're 12. What the hell do you know what's good for you, right? You know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So
that's true. They probably
yes,
do.
Adults sometimes are going to make those decisions for you. But hey, guys, here's the good news. Here's where we do believe you should have a voice. Or even better yet, where are some things you do believe you should have a voice in? And here's why I agree with you or why I don't. Right?
That's the answer. Ask the question.
It comes back. Yeah. It comes back to that clarity. So anyway,
regardless of where you sit, just saying, this is how we'd like to approach it. Maybe just asking the question up front. And honestly, if I'm walking into a new superintendent, which I'm not, but at the same time, if I'm walking in, that's the first conversation that I'm going to have with the leaders in the building. What do you want to voice in? What don't you want to voice in? How can we make sure that the frameworks are set up to make sure that you feel like you can do your best work? Here are the fences that I've been given by the Board of Education that I need to land within. So within those fences, how can we make sure that we give you freedom within those fences? So here's the freedom within the fences. At the same time, even within that freedom, we need to have procedures and process moving forward so we're all clear on what happens within the context of that framework. Because this framework that we've been given by the Board of Education or by the state or whatever the case may be, that's the thing that they're going to look at, okay? And that's not going to change right now. And I'm sorry that it's not going to change, but that's not something we can do anything about right now. We can do anything within the context of that frame, of that offense. So what is it going to look like for all of us moving forward? What do you want to have a voice in? What don't you want to have a voice in? And if you feel like you need more of a voice than you have, what's the process to have that conversation? Because a lot of times when people say they don't have a voice in a situation, what happens, Jimmy? As soon as they say they don't have a voice in the situation, they run to somebody, either the person that's not giving them the voice, or they run to somebody else, very emotionally, because they feel like they were wronged in that situation, and they tell that person why they were wronged and why they should have had a voice. Well, if we had a process before that happened, now we can redirect, and sometimes it's just taking a step back from the emotion of the moment to have a process in place that says, when you feel like you didn't have a voice in a situation that you felt like you should have had a voice in, here's the process by which we're going to operate so we're all clear on what it's going to look like moving forward. And I'm willing, as the leader here, I'm willing to have any conversation with you that you want, but we're going to do it within the context of this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing you said, Joe, is, what do you want to voice in, right? Those types of things. And I would add also on that, what have you had a voice in if I'm coming in new, right? So now, and then we can talk about that. And then again, take some time to process and come back and explain, well, here's why I don't believe you should, or maybe you were given too much. And let me, again, the explanation and taking the time to really bring clarity to those types of things. So, Joe, we are getting near the end of our time, and we never really talked about the recognition. But I will say this about the recognition. And I did see a lot of the comments. So again, we don't have to dive as deep into that, but it is interesting if we talk about what are the parameters, what voices, what's the history. Again, it's still kind of the same thing. It intersects. Yeah. But do I believe we should be doing recognitions in schools? Absolutely. I absolutely agree we should be doing that. But the question is going to come down to how are we doing the recognitions? I also know this just from history, because I just experienced this a couple of weeks ago. There was a teacher who doesn't want to be recognized as Teacher of the Year. They do not want that recognition. Yep. And so the question becomes this, why? And in talking to that individual, is they just do not want to deal with the fallout that comes from that, because this person felt like if that happens, I do not want to deal with the gossip of the people around the organization or thinking, oh, I can't believe she's a Teacher of the Year. And that's a killer for us, right? Because what it tells us is the culture is not ready for that type of recognition on an individual, if individuals so feel that way. So maybe one thing for leaders who are doing these is to literally go back and ask teachers, is this something you want to continue to see? What is the benefit? What are some things that we can do better? So how do we feel about these things? So in other words, we need to ask, I think, our kids and our staff, how they feel about these recognitions. And quite frankly, there are a bazillion ways to recognize people. And maybe we should, here we go. Maybe that's an area where they should have a voice and saying, hey, if we did recognize, what are some ways that could look like? And how do we create a healthier culture? Because at the end of the day, we do need to celebrate and honor our people. And it's a heartbreaker when our people don't feel they're in an environment where that actually is a good thing for them. So those are some things to recognize or to reflect on there. So Joe, I'll let you close it out because my friend, I'm a little worried that you're about to fall asleep. But because this is you, buddy. So
well, you know, now that I'm up and I can go get my workout in.
Lies.
Look, man, I walk to work. Did you walk to work? No. So here's the thing. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't even have a job, Joe.
No, that's also true. That's also true. I think the recognition comes down to this. The recognition piece comes down to this. I think if it's more of a spotlight than it is, you know, an award, there's a different conversation about it. Because if we're saying that we're going to recognize the best teacher every month, I mean, there's a lot of people that would probably say that I've talked to them like, well, I know who the best teacher is in school. They could probably win it every month, right? Like that could happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's think about how it's a spotlight of what they're doing and recognize that piece of it, because I truly believe that they need to be recognized for things that they've done, the opportunities that they've given kids, opportunities that they've given staff. And I think one of the things that's really important about the recognition piece is you can get the nicest award, you can get the nicest plaque, you can get the, you know, the videos and all that stuff. But my favorite part about those are the conversations that happen, you know, behind closed doors about how you feel about that person and what they've done. And the impact that they've had either on the kids that they serve, or it's happened a couple times where for me, where I was like, it's impacted my kids. And to know that I go home to 3 kids that have been impacted by the people in this building, all different times of the year, you know, in doing different things, to have that conversation with the staff member. And to make sure that not only that I have the conversation with the staff member, but to make sure that somebody outside of our space that doesn't get to see them do this work on a regular basis, when you can have that conversation with them and make a connection for the person, because a lot of times we walk between 2 places where we don't know where our value is. If we can put ourselves in a situation where we become the connector to recognize, now all of a sudden everybody feels better about the work that they do. So if we're going to issue a challenge for next week, the challenge is this: please go out there and make sure that you have a conversation with a staff member about some of the great things that they're doing, but don't just leave it there. Extend a conversation to somebody in their world that they don't get a chance, that doesn't get a chance to see what they do on a regular basis, and make sure that that person knows how important the person in your building is. And you will, like, what comes out of that is incredibly special, because the person is incredibly special. So continue to do that, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us super early today. And always wanted to, honestly, it is humbling to know that you're here. It is humbling to know that you come back and listen to us. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help out, please don't hesitate to ask. We hope you have a fantastic week. We will see you next week on The Weekly Show. Thank you so much for being with us today, because it's always about leadership, because we lead in all ways. Have a great day, everybody.